growth of fashion and retail in India. To shed a little light on the subject, our panelists for today, Mr. Saket Dhanker, Ms. Kanchan Dhingra, and Mr. Nachiket Barve. Mr. Saket Dhanker is head of IMG-Reliance.
So good afternoon everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm delighted to be talking to you on fashion retail. I've been working for more than 10 years in this space now, and it's quite exciting to be working in this space. Just to give you a brief idea of my background, I did engineering from our neighborhood IIT Bombay, and then I went on to do my MBA from IIM Calcutta. So with that kind of, professional and technical education, I landed in the field of fashion. So for last 10 years, I've been working in the business of fashion. So I will try to take a very technical and a mathematical view of fashion, which I would love to explain to you. And because we have Nachiket also in the panel, I will not like to touch the design space of it. So I will like to focus my energies more on the market, on the business, and on the supply chain part of it. I have 5 slides just to set context for the apparel market in India, and just to let you know about the size. The domestic apparel market right now is 1,25,000 crores. It's supposed to grow 4 times in next 10 years. So we are looking at a huge market. How the market is segmented is that first of all, it is segmented in Western wear and ethnic wear. Then the Western wear apparel market is segmented in ready-to-wear and tailored, and the ready-to-wear market is segmented in branded and unbranded. So I'm going to restrict myself to the Western ready-to-wear branded market, which is a huge 18,000 crores. And this is the space that all of us are likely to operate in. In terms of how this market is segmented is economy and popular segment, where typically a men's shirt would be less than 1,000 rupees. We have the premium segment where the shirts are from 1,500 to 2,500. Super premium is 2,500 to 4,000, and a men's shirt priced more than 4,000 comes in luxury segment. So essentially the luxury and the super premium part of the market is about 2,000 crores, and the premium segment which we see in the malls that we go is about 4,000 crores. So this is a huge market. It's going to get 4 times in next 10 years. Now what this chart essentially tells you is that it's a large growing market with multiple players and multiple brands and international brands entering the market. So as far as the brand space is concerned, it's cluttered, and there are huge offerings for every consumer. As far as all of us understand fashion, and from the consumer side, that the consumers have they have their own preferences, they have their own emphasis on variety, newness, and they come from different regions, they have their regional tastes. So just to marry these brands with the Indian consumer, it gets done by something called fashion retail, and that is what makes fashion retail so exciting. The complex and the exciting world of fashion retail essentially has 5 variables in play, and you need to get all 5 of them right if you want to sell your product to the customer. So the first part is the merchandise, which means essentially there are 2 parts to the merchandise. First is the design part, and second is the supply chain. So you might be a good designer, or you might have a brilliant design or a product, but you also need to deliver it to the right consumer in the right size at the right place. So that is what we mean by supply chain, and I'll be taking you through essentially the supply chain part of the business, because I believe that most of the designers, they lack in terms of the supply chain. In terms of pricing, we all understand from consumer perspective what pricing means. To sell a product, the price value equation of a product should meet the consumer needs. Only then the purchase will happen. In terms of experience, we talk about visual merchandising, we talk about lighting of a store, we talk about the store facade. So all those things comes part of the experience. In terms of convenience, we look at the format of store that you want, whether you want your own store, you want to have a franchisee store, you want to enter a trade channel through multi-branded outlets. So all those things are considered. And the last thing is the customer, where you focus on your brand imagery, you try to segment your brands, and you want to get relevant footfalls in your store. For example, if a person visits a Louis Vuitton store, and if he asks why is this bag priced at 1 lakh rupees, then that is not the relevant customer for that brand. So essentially what I'm trying to say is if you have to sell your product to a customer, you need to get all these boxes need to be ticked, and all these boxes need to be in place so that the final purchase happens. And because of this multi-variable, our business is so exciting and thrilling. And I can say, having worked for more than 10 years, I'm still learning the tricks of the trade. So now, assuming that all of you are an expert in fashion design, I will quickly move on to the supply chain, because this is one area which I feel is a critical success factor. And so this is a traditional supply chain, an apparel supply chain, which is about 1 year, which is about 1 year, lasts for 1 year. And this is what makes the thing complex. Let me take you through the best practices of a supply chain. So first of all, we start with something called a range architecture, which is, let's say, 1 year before the season starts. So we start working 1 year before the season starts. We do market intelligence. We look at the key macro trends. We look at the business plan. So we want to ensure that our brand will grow faster than the market is growing. We will grow faster than the competition. So all those things. So the targets are set 1 year before the season starts. This is extremely critical, and this will result in a buy plan. So once you've decided that we will need X number of options and these quantities, you give the brief or the range architecture to the design team. Now the design team does, I'm sure you understand the design part of it. The design team, after doing their capturing trends by visiting fashion capitals, fairs, through WGSN, they come up with 2x options. So if X is the number of options required in a season, they come up with 2x number of options, and they present it in a process called book and make. So in a book and make, essentially a brand invites all its store manager, all its channel partners, all relevant consumer panels. All of them are invited, and those 2x options are shown to the entire book and make panel. All of them, they select first of all, they select X options out of 2X options, and second is they select quantities for each style. So at the end of the book and make, your buy plan is made, and you give your buy plan, which comprises of quantities for each SKU, to your sourcing and merchandising team. So this is, so 6 months, so 4 months are gone, now 6 months are left. You have your buy plan, and you start sourcing for the fabrics. So you source the fabrics, you have a database of about 100 manufacturing vendors, and you start making products. So once the products come in warehouse, it's about 1 month to go for the season. Then again, a complex mathematical exercise gets done, which is called deployment. Essentially, you have the entire range, but you need to deploy for each store. You need to deploy the right design, the right product in its relevant sizes. So that is a huge mathematical exercise, which we all call deployment. Is very critical to send the right product to the right store. Just to take you through various supply chain models that we have, which are again best practices. We have something called quick response supply chain. So what we are trying to say is that this is the traditional supply chain. This is 10 months, but right now, so this can only cover 50% of your products, but you need to have parallel supply chains running with this so that you can ensure newness and variety in your stores. So we have something called a quick response model, wherein it is mathematically now proven that the best forecasting for a sell-through of a style can be done by taking into account the initial sales for the first 5 days of a style. So this quick response is based on the initial demand for that style. So once the product goes in stores, after 5 or 10 days, you take the sales and you extrapolate those sales. And if your quantity is short of that number, then you start making. So your supply chain has to be geared up to make that product in 2 months. So that is something called quick response. We also call something as a delayed differentiation, which is taking the call closer to the season. So rather than taking a call, let's say 10 months in advance, we can delay certain critical decisions like color, fits, and quantities. So how Benetton does it is that they make their crew necks, for example, from a gray fabric, and they color it closer to the season depending on the trends. We have something called fast fashion, which is what Zara does. So fast fashion essentially means postponing your buy and taking a call closer to the season. So fast fashion is not a self-sufficient supply chain. It can comprise 10 to 20% of your entire product portfolio. So let's say your core products can come from the traditional supply chain, whereas your fast fashion products, they need to come through a different supply chain, which is much more vertically integrated so that you can manufacture products within 2 months' time. There is a concept called flash collection and stock lots, which essentially means you are collaborating with mills, and whatever fabrics they are left with, you tie up with them. So you save on 3 months of fabric sourcing, and you can take those fabrics and you can manufacture shirts out of them, and you can start selling them. So this is also a quick way. I don't recommend this because this essentially depends on the stock which is left with a mill. Then the next concept is called just-in-time manufacturing, wherein what we do is that rather than, if suppose we have bought fabric for 500 shirts, we only make 300 shirts, and the remaining 200 meters is with us. Only when the sales happen, we start converting that fabric into shirts. So this is something called just-in-time manufacturing. So in case the shirt bombs or the sell-throughs are not good, you can utilize that fabric for something else. Book and make, I've already explained to you, where you use the help of your store managers, your channel partners, consumer panels to forecast for you how many pieces you can sell in each SKU. So these are the various models that we use in supply chain so that we have higher sell-throughs. So that was a small concept of supply chain. Let me now tell you 10 best practices for fashion brands that I feel are extremely critical. The first is that we need to choose the retail format for a democratic presence. Okay, it can be a multi-brand, it can be a multi-channel, multi-format. So what I'm trying to say is that we right now are having our stores in malls, which means that everyone is entering the malls. So it is extremely difficult for us to segment consumers. So for a fashion brand, it is critical that we have a democratic presence. We cover a wider spectrum of consumers in terms of price points, in terms of product offerings, and in terms of fashion sensibilities. So just to give you one example of how a brand can do it by having various sub-brands is Hugo Boss, for example. So Hugo Boss has 5 sub-brands, which is the black label, the orange, the green, the Boss Selection, and the Hugo. So if you combine the portfolio of all these 5 products, they cover a wider spectrum of consumer preferences, price points, and product portfolio in terms of the fashion design. So you can have multiple brands. You can decide to retail through multiple channels. While your own stores give you a good experience to the consumer, the trade partners, the trade channel is much more profitable than your own stores. And the trade also makes your brand available in various cities. Multiple formats. So you can also have different formats for your stores. You can also look at franchisee stores in tier 2 and 3 markets. So this thing is extremely critical for you to be successful. Second is clarify margin model and product assortment for each format. Now if you are there, let's say in a Oberoi mall, if you have your own store also, and if you are selling through a central also, you need to ensure that there are different price points in both the stores, and there are different products which are there in the different stores, because the consumer who's walking into a central is very different from who will be walking into your store. So it is extremely critical that we clarify. Now when we have our own stores, we have the gross margins are higher, but obviously the store operating costs are huge. But when we are with a trade partner, the trade channel is more profitable because the store operating cost gets divided across brands. Manage SKU proliferation. It is very tempting for a fashion brand to give you the same style in 2 collars or in 2 sleeve lengths or 2 shirt lengths, or or in odd sizes, or let's say extra large sizes. But what it certainly does is that it makes your supply chain, it is a burden on your supply chain, and it also reduces the number of options in a store. So you will be sitting on a huge depth, but the number of options in a store would be very less, and when consumers come looking for newness or variety, that gets compromised. One typical problem with which all Indian brands have is that they have not been able to sort out their core portfolio. So what we mean by, the entire product offering of all the fashion brands gets divided into core products, which which forms about 60% of the offering. Then there is a current season products, which is about 30%. And we have something which is very extremely fashion forward, which should be about 10%. What we see in terms of Indian brands is that this thing is not categorized clearly, and most of them either they attempt everything which is fashion forward or everything which is extremely basic. So a clear balance needs to be established by fashion brands in terms of their product portfolio, and core needs to be 50 to 60% of the range. We need to design our supply chain to put the core products on automatic replenishment, and all the design and the fashion forward styles need to be made as per the order. We need to ensure dynamic. A lot of brands, they wait for the entire 4-5 month season and they go on sale at the end of the season. But what it is a proven fact that something which is not sold in the first 4 weeks is not going to sell even later. So it is much better that you correct the price value equation by offering a minimum discount on that and try to sell it in the initial part, because it is much better to sell it right now at 15% rather than selling it after 6 months at 50% off. Again, brands, they feel shy of doing this, but the international brands, they are smart, and they, in one corner of their store, they put brands on sale. We need to protect opening price points, good, better, best. We need to have a clear price point ladder for our product offerings. So how a entry price point works is it invites customers to the stores. It invites younger customers to gain experience. People, for an aspirational brand, it is important that younger customers come and experience that brand. So I'm sure you've seen the Mango crew neck t-shirts at extremely affordable prices. So it is extremely critical to have a opening price point. You need to protect it strongly through a strong core product, and you need to have a price ladder, which, let's say, in case of India, let's say if you're starting at 700 rupees, it should go up to as much as 6,000 to 7,000 rupees, because all kind of customers are walking into your store, so you should cover a wider price offering. Create style and occasion. The Indian shoppers are they are functional in terms of their shopping behavior, and also they shop on occasions. For example, marriage is one season where they really shop. So as a brand and as a marketing team, I think the idea should be how to educate your styles through coordinated looks. You need to ensure that the style of your consumers evolve over a period of time. So visual merchandising, product coordinated looks, product communication, in-store marketing, offers, all of them play an important role in creating style and occasion for your brand. Each front-end sales staff to own 100 core customers. Your core customers are very important. Until unless you have 50% of your business coming from your repeat purchases, you will not be profitable. The cost of acquiring a new customer is much more than selling it to the retained customer. So that can only be done if your sales team knows what each of your customer wants and is continuously engaging with them. Be famous for something. Again, extremely important. None of the Indian brand does it. You need to be known for something. So you can be known for your product. For example, Gap is known for chinos. You have Lacoste known for its colorful polos. You have Diesel known for its attitude. But none of the Indian brand, for example, has been known has focused on this. But this is extremely critical in a fragmented market where there are hundreds of brands and every mall has 200 stores. It is extremely important that you be famous for something. So those were just 10 thoughts that I had on the best practices if you have a fashion retail brand. This is my last slide just on the marketing part of it. So let me just take you through the various marketing vehicles that can be used by a fashion retail brand and why are they used. So first is the mass media, which is print, TV and hoardings, which we call above the line in the marketing jargon. And this type of communication is generally used for building reach, so reaching to larger audience, and for your salience. Salience is your brand recall. So the above the line is extremely expensive, but it certainly gives you the reach and salience. So if you have, let's say, 40, 80 stores across India, then I certainly advise you to use this medium. Suppose if you have a luxury label or if you are a designer, then my suggestion to you is to go for a below the line or a CRM below the line marketing activation, which is targeted to that person. So above the line is where I'm putting a hoarding and I'm communicating to everyone. But below the line is, for example, I send a mailer to Nachiket saying that this is the gift voucher for you, please come to my store and buy. So I'm only talking to him, I am not talking to everyone else. So this is something called below the line, extremely effective, and the chances of acquiring are also much higher through a below the line communication. A lot of brands, they do event sponsorships. It gives them a high ground. So Will's Lifestyle India Fashion Week, for example, implies Will's Lifestyle is a fashionable brand, so which implies that when you walk into the Will's Lifestyle store, you expect something out of the world. Then there are new media which is coming up. For example, we have digital media, which is website. It is extremely important for us to share our brand content and to share our ideas and whatever we are doing to our consumers. This is the new marketing mantra that needs to be done through our websites. Social media is taking that one step forward. So rather than sharing, we also need to listen to what our consumers are saying. So it's more of a dialogue that happens through social media. PR certainly helps in terms of luxury and designer labels. It creates a positive word of mouth, and one customer obviously tells it, or one patron of your brand tells it and gets 10 more customers. So the chances of acquiring customers, the cost is the cheapest in terms of a PR exercise. Store facade, now a mall has 200 stores, so for a customer to enter your store, the store facade obviously needs to be impressive. So a lot of brands are spending nowadays on visual merchandising also. In-store communication, so you might get relevant footfalls, but for them to ensure that they buy a product from your store, you need to, and for conversion, you need to ensure that whatever the designers have conceptualized, okay, that gets communicated to the consumer in the right kind of experience. So once you do that, then only the conversion happens. So integrated marketing mix also means that all the channels of marketing need to tell the same thing. It should not be that on TV you are saying something else, on social media you are saying something else, in the store you are saying something else. So for example, if you have done a collection on let's say eco style, for example, so your TV ad needs to be on eco style, your store window needs to be on eco style, you need to be on social media also, you need to be talking about eco style, and the products available in the store should also form a major part of the eco style collection. So that is what we mean by integrated marketing, wherein what the designers thought 1 year before, when they started conceptualizing, when they identified that yes, eco style was a major trend, that is brought alive into the retail environment through all these marketing vehicles, and that is when customers will get excited to buy something which is eco style, and they'll come walk into your store and they'll buy eco style. So with that, I think that is all I had to say. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Saket, for the insights you gave us.
I want to ask Nachiket a question, and this question is in two parts. So the first part being that today we are in an age where the opportunity for designers is the maximum because of digital media and also because so many stores coming in, FDI coming in. At the same time, it's also the competition at the highest because there are so many fashion schools which are opening up, and there are so many designers that are there, which are competing with each other. So one is, how does a designer today differentiate him or herself in this environment? Secondly, also, what are the key challenges that are currently faced by designers?
So how many of you here want to be fashion entrepreneurs or launch your own label? Let me just raise your hand. Quite a significant number. So, I think after listening to different sides of the story, I think it's a little like, 7 blind men and the elephant. And the elephant is jogging at a rapid pace and metamorphosizing. So it's really a little bit of luck by chance, a lot of hard work, a lot of passion. And it's a tough journey. Like Kanchan said, if you are in it for keeps, only then should you go ahead with it. I was recently reading, he's my favorite artist, Vincent van Gogh. And he sold only one painting in his lifetime. Fortunately, fashion doesn't work like that. What we create is art, but it also has a lot of commerce thrown in. So what you do, I think, is only valid if people wear it. If it's just something which is, fawned about and bloggers wearing it to fashion weeks and, fawning and gushing and 5 celebrities wearing it, yeah, I mean, it does create a social impact, but for an organization to be built, for a style to grow, and it's a very cash-intensive business. So it's important that your clothes sell well, and you build a very, very solid customer base. It's my 7th year in fashion, and it really feels like a lot longer. But I think what it involves is also, like Saket said, and I wish our the Indian fashion industry was so organized. I mean, within these 6.5 years that I've seen changes, it's changed massively, it's changed rapidly, and I still feel, it's a very, very volatile environment which changes continuously. Like when we started, I did my debut at Lakme Fashion Week Gen Next, and I had studied design at NID, and I had a scholarship to go study in Paris at NSAD, and I came back and had a year's experience of working in India, and all it had equipped me was to do good design and have a sense and a clearly defined point of view, which perhaps set the label in terms of what gave it a distinct identity. But I had no idea what consignment was, what outright was. So I must have a confession here. In my first season, a very, very famous Tony store from Bombay came to me and said, we don't really launch everybody and we are launching you. But you will have to give us an exclusive in Bombay on consignment and we will fix the MRP. I mean, that is harakiri. Like, it's like somebody telling, taking you on the top of Chrysler building and saying, jump. This parachute is hidden somewhere. So, from then it's been a lot of challenges. And Kanchan and I have our little, to and fro's in terms of terms and payments and how do we do it. But I think everybody has their challenges. It's also about working. It is a partnership, because what you create is ultimately has to be on the backs of people. It has to be sold in an environment which nourishes the product, which sort of communicates your concept right to the customer, because not only that's how you generate revenue, but that's how you build a brand. For it's important to have something unique to say. Secondly, it's important that those clothes be worn. I have never had a PR person, but you have the strangest person. Like, I once went to IFA in Colombo as a guest, and there was one lady in a nightclub dancing in a corner from Sri Lanka who was wearing a garment of mine she had bought in Chennai. So your clothes will be your message. But it's important that you're willing to be realistic about it, to have a context, and as it becomes more and more competitive now, I think it's important to not take shortcuts and have a story to tell. Have something which is original. See, I mean, the only thing which will differentiate you from the market is you yourself. Hopefully there's no clones of you running around in different countries or different parts of the city. So if you have a mind of your own, if you have the gumption to sort of believe in yourself, invest in yourself, and believe in the challenges are endless. It's like, it's like juggling hot coals every day on your hands. So you think, ek khatam ho gaya, something else. Like, it's like Medusa. You chop one head off, the other head pops up. And it never changes. And I think after 6 years of losing sleep and, having all these stress attacks over it, I've come to realize that's how it's always going to be. And maybe there'll be 3 Medusas on 3 sides. But if you believe in yourself and if you have a dream, you really have to fight for it, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Kanchan, basically when you started your own designer store, so there may be a point when you go to a mall, there are like number of designer stores that are in a line only.
Yeah.
So there's a competing market over it, and they all are growing in a very much with a bigger scale. For example, you opening a design store, beside you there's a one more other store is coming up and is competing you.
Right.
So at that time, at initial point when you started, so how did you compete it? What was your competing strategy or marketing and sales? So how do you deal with that? Can you share that?
Specifically talking about Chamomile in its current location, we are the only multi-designer store at Palladium. So therefore, we didn't have the challenge of other multi-designer stores. However, there were many other designer stores. I think one doesn't need to worry about competition if one is clear about A, what their brand communication is, B, about having your own sort of being true to your customers. I think that's what the essence of the whole thing is, being true to your customers and making sure that whatever your brand stands for. And one of the things, like for example, like when new stores emerge, I see a lot of new quirky and edgy trends coming up. And then when I look at them, I say, no, but this doesn't agree with the philosophy of Chamomile. And even at the time when we conceptualized the brand, the very name Chamomile meant a few things for us. It meant a very sublime shopping experience. It was a place, and I don't know if you've seen the interiors of our store, right from the Delhi store to the store in Khar to the store at Palladium, have won awards for their interiors. It's been, usually like spaces covered in white, natural materials. We've always tried to keep very, very friendly staff and not snooty staff, which is usually associated with very luxury stores. And I've had that experience. I don't know if you've had. So I think these are some of the things that Chamomile stood for. Also pricing. It has been a very, very challenging task, but we've tried to keep the pricing as conscientious as possible. Literally, sometimes for every 200 or 300 rupees, fighting with our designers and saying, why can't you bring the price of this down? So I feel that if that happens, then no matter how many people there are in your vicinity, I don't know what your favorite brands are, but my favorite brands are like for example, Fab India. I love that brand. Or I love, in the space of salons, I love B Blunt. No matter how many salons open next to B Blunt or Fab India, stores next to Fab India, I would still go there because I know what that brand stands for. So that's what we tried to do in the beginning, and I think we were largely successful. So that's what I would say. I think being true to what you are and to your customers really helps you go a long way.
Can you throw a light on something about the changing media habits? Talk about in the last slide. What are the changing media habits when you open a store or you have a multiple brand? So what can adaptation into it? So what are the changing habits of the media?
First of all, let me tell you what are the changing in terms of media. The demographics are changing. People are becoming younger, so your consumer is becoming younger. Then there is a lot of clutter in the media space. For example, print is all clutter. You've seen the credibility of print is being questioned. For example, TV is becoming hugely expensive. Okay, so fashion competes with other industries, and I have, for example, not seen too many fashion ads on TV. So TV is too expensive for fashion brands. Print is cluttered and doesn't have the credibility. So these are the challenges which are there in the media space. So what fashion is doing is it is moving on to digital and social media, because the quality of engagement which happens over social media is much more is much better than how they can communicate through the above the line media. So this is my answer to your how things are changing in the media world. Second is, if you're launching a new store, I think and assuming you have only one store, then obviously you have to do something called, which is a catchment specific marketing. So for example, if I had one store, let's say in Palladium Mall, then obviously I'll restrict myself to the Palladium Mall environment, and also I will do a lot of below the line activations. I will invite a lot of people to come and experience my store. So I'll be sending them gift vouchers, I'll be sending them targeted activations, customized personalized mailers, for example, to invite them to my store. And so that is one. So I would want to acquire more customers to my store. Second is people who are walking in organically, who are part of the mall and are walking in. Initially I will offer them some incentive to buy, so that I get a customer base made. So whereas I am acquiring customers, I am also ensuring whosoever walks into my store at that point of time, for first 2 months there is an offer, like if you shop for 20,000 rupees, then we give you a 2,000 rupees off or something. So some incentive is there for people who are walking in on their own to get converted. Third kind of marketing which gets done is something called cross navigation in a mall. For example, you do a tie-up with some, let's say if you have a designer store, then you do a tie-up with a jewelry store, and you cross navigate customers to each other. So that in case of a new store, the marketing gets restricted to the catchment.
I just want to add, like when Saket was talking about his presentation, I think now what happens also, India is such a unique market, like everybody has been saying. You have somebody who's extremely fashion conscious, well-traveled, knows their brands, knows quality and is willing to pay for it. And then you have somebody who wants all of that but doesn't want to pay for it, or doesn't care if it's an original or a copy. So I think while we cater to a niche, even that niche is very wide, and you really have to define who's your core customer, because if you try to please them all, it just dilutes itself and kills itself a little bit, I think.
So this is just a little bit about the business side of it. So your design will have a value, and then the value would be also based on exclusivity, like she said. So The market shouldn't be flooded with it. It shouldn't be available everywhere. It should be available enough to match the value. So how do you get that value volume ratio right for a new or an upcoming label or a brand up to a point where it becomes a brand? So once it becomes a brand, then I guess the value can go pretty much up.
See, as a fashion entrepreneur in India, I think you pretty much are having 8 hats at one point of time. So you're the designer, you're the financer, you're the marketer, you're the PR person, you're everything. So I think it's of course through trial and error, but it's also by having a strong sense of intuition and also having a constant dialogue with your partners. I mean, even Kanchan can vouch. We have her all the time saying, what are the sales, what is the feedback. So unless you're constantly, be it talking to the editors, be it talking to the stores, it's being open to feedback because they will tell you. At least some of them will tell you. Because, otherwise how do you can't be in 8 different places at every point of time. So, and being again like quick in your actions in terms of, or reactions rather. So if you feel something is not working well, how do you change? Maybe you sort of, it's a little like shooting in the dark at times. But something hits somewhere and you have to be receptive, open and willing to change.
How would you try and fix the value volume ratio? So value is the cost of the design, and the volume is the amount of design that's available, the number of spaces.
Yeah, sure.
So how do you get that right? That mix?
Well, for me, I would say that firstly, once we know that this is our core product, okay, and based on customer feedback from, let's say, X period of time, which shows clearly that this is what customers are coming to our store for mainly, and these are the top 3 categories that customers really want. I think at that point, and secondly, also observation of what price points sell. So for me, it's not like I have to do any, quite honestly, any balance between value and volume. I can have both. We have had experiments with higher price points at our store, but we realized that they were not succeeding because customers were not willing to pay beyond a certain point at the kind of location that we were, or based on their imagery of what Chamomile was. So typically for us, we've been successful in the say 7,000 to 50,000 price point and not beyond that, which I know they'd be happy to probably shell out at another store, 2 lakhs and in excess of that. So for us, it's just been about knowing what those categories are and making sure that we have enough depth and assortment in that category. So like of late, we were having huge challenges in the area of sizing. Therefore, there were certain designers with whom we only ordered, extra larges and things like that. And so I think I'll give you a very interesting example of how we actually did it. We created 6 customer prototypes, where I told the girls in my store, sketch me 6 different kinds of women and give them different descriptions. Here's this 22-year-old girl who comes and she shops for Nishka Lola's stuff. She's like this, she's slim, she likes something which is more, glamorous. And then make me this other woman who's this corporate woman. And they were all real women. And then we said, okay, do I have enough for her? Do I have enough for her? And so that's how we design. We're a very small company, so ours is definitely a very mad, sort of a very intuitive way of doing things, I would say. Not a very, you know what I mean? We're a small company and that's how we operate. So I hope that answers what you...
It's a small company that makes a very big impact in a very short time.
Follow-up. So I'm hearing intuition, I'm hearing shooting in the dark, and I was actually looking at strategic research or documentation that the industry has or industry bodies have that would enable commencement of brands, growth of brands up to a point, looking at value, pricing.
I'll just add a little funny anecdote, and it's funny I'm saying it with both Saket and Kanchan here. About when I was in my 2nd season, Lakme Fashion Week had organized a seminar with retailers and designers in the auditorium of like somewhere at the back of NCPA. I think my 2nd season itself, yes. And it was a little like the meeting at the Godfather, because there were all these big daddies of retail sitting on stage, and the designers just went and attacked them like crows. They were like, at that point, nobody was buying outright. See, I understand the store's challenges. We offer flexible percentages or whatever, but it's important that whoever, at least the bigger stores, if your product is worth it, they have to believe in you and put their money where their mouth is. If you're on consignment, it will be forever tucked away in the back of the store. हाँ, we have it. अभी आज ही अंदर डाला, कल ही अंदर डाला, all the bullshit you hear. But the point is, you are investing hard-earned money into the product. Let them also invest something in it. So when you're talking of an industry body, unfortunately with designers, there is still, it's like, it's very sad. But maybe you can count like 8 people in from the designers who I can actually have a conversation with, but heart to heart. Otherwise, it's a little like crabs, because everybody's like, "Arey, uska bik jayega." Arey, what? Is looking at bloody 1 billion people, 1.2 billion people in the market. What, only 8 dresses they're going to buy? Like, get over it, So unless there is that some sort of a solidarity between, and I think why should it be even retailers against designers? Everybody as an industry, like look at the CFDA. You have to grow it together because the market is huge. And we all, like, it's like one pan stall in a large buffet at a wedding. Everybody's fighting on the one very stupid pan stall. There's the whole buffet to cater to. But till that happens, it will take time. And I think this designer, like, everybody, like, across generations has to put it together. Because otherwise there is no end to it, and I keep telling my interns, you said it's intuition and logic and hard work, and Neeta said madness. Whoever interns with me, after 2 months, I ask them, are you getting dreams of tailors and clothes at 3 a.m? Then you have arrived. So there is no easy way out, you just cannot.
My question is for Kanchan. Could you share your view on how multi-brand could be helpful for budding designers, Indian budding designers?
It's the place to be. Because I'll give you an example. We are always on the lookout for emerging talent, and I'm speaking on behalf of the multi-designer fashion retail industry. One of the things that we did last year was we sponsored an event at a fashion institute, and the 2 award-winning designers whose final collections were, according to us, the most commercially viable and the most creative, were given a chance to retail straight out of their, they had just finished college, barely 19 or 20 years old, and they were retailing at Chamomile. So I think it's about a designer's own originality, talent, and all of that jazz, and then you will find avenues. So I think I covered all of that, and what are the things that you really need to look out for, what are the things that you need to hone in yourself, and multi-designer retail, because for the designer there are no additional overheads of putting your product out there. You've already got a platform to launch it. But then you have to be very careful with the kind of place this is what I mentioned in my presentation, that you need to be careful that your identity synchronizes with the identity of that multi-brand location. That is something you need to be careful about. Does that answer the question?
What she said is very correct, because like even we've experienced where a certain collection has done exceedingly well in some stores, and certain stores is just not sold at all. So unless you find that match, it's not going to work, and of course it has to be, because like I mentioned at the beginning, unless your clothes sell, they have no validity. I mean, if you have like a certificate from a school saying most creative collection and it's hanging in your room, that's not how you grow a brand,
Also, I think certainly for a new designer, a multi-brand retail store certainly makes sense, because first of all, you're getting a platform from where you can showcase your collection. Second is, the shopper behavior in a multi-designer store is different. You get more of a comparative shopper who will compare all the products. So there is in case you are talented, there is a big chance that you will stand out, and you will traffic, or let's say sales of some other designer, you will eat into sales of some other designer. So the chances of you growing faster in a multi-brand store are much higher. And you can use that feedback, and then you can build on to your label. So I think for first 2 years, it's extremely critical that you be there in these stores, so that you get a feedback on your sales. You get direct comparisons with other designers, and you also get consumer feedback. Whereas for a young designer to open his or her own store is extremely difficult.
And and it feels amazing, because forget about just the money coming in, the fact that so many people are willing to pay their hard-earned cash for your clothes over somebody else's, and wear those clothes with pride is a very, very good feeling. So,
my question is to Nachiket sir. You've been a part of haute couture in Paris when you've been scholarship there, right? So I'm so much into it actually, and the reason I want to know the question is that what's the basic difference between the haute couture in Paris or in any other fashion country than India?
The Paris haute couture is something which is a great facade to sell clothes to some 150 women worldwide who are willing to pay like 3 crores for a dress and sell lots of perfume and lipstick at airports. The haute couture in India is actually sold to clients who are looking for a 10 lakh lehenga to get married in. So I think it's really important to get a reality check before you step out, because there's a time when I was in Paris where I wanted to become the next Valentino, and then very quickly after coming I realized that Valentino is good that he's retired and gone now, but here there is a much more dynamic market which you ought to tap. Or you go straight to bridal. I mean, if you so many young designers, I see them sketching these ostrich feather gowns and beautiful things. Name, where are you going to wear it? Are you going to wear it to the Oberoi for dinner? Are you going to wear it to the Umaid Bhavan Palace? See, clothes, it's not just clothes. Clothes need a life that they can fit into. So unless you doing all these beautiful velvet ball gowns, where is the ball? So, so look at life and create clothes for life. They're not in an imaginary context.
I just want to add to this that when we get new designers that approach our store and we tell them, why don't you send us your collection, they send us their runway pictures, and it's a good understanding for us to see, okay, this is the kind of sensibility they have, but what is the product that you're going to be actually putting on the rack? It has to be different and modified and a tapered down version of what you show on the ramp. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much for this panel.